From bullets to butter to a bounce house, there was something for everyone in the small northeastern Nuckolls County village of Oak on Saturday, August 11th. That day, at least, the village became perhaps the largest, and if not that, the second largest population center of Nuckolls County. The occasion was the Oregon Trail reenactment of the 1864 Native American raids. Unlike the last event held in 2014, when temperatures exceeded the 100-degree mark and were coupled with high humidity, Saturday's event was blessed with moderate temperatures and clear skies. More than 1,000 visitors took one of the 5 tours along the trail, with an estimated 70 cars in each tour. The tours departed from near the Oak Church and followed a 24-mile loop. The trips were not without an error or two. The Express reporter, who shared a ride with the descendants of the Robert Embry family, was one of the many cars which followed a vehicle that was not part of the tour. After turning around, the tour continued on the proper route. The first stop on the tour was the reenactment of the abduction of Laura Roper, Lucinda, William, and Isabel Eubanks at a spot called the Narrows. When one Native American reenactor dismounted to scalp a victim, his horse decided to keep going. The spectators gathered on the hillside overlooking the scene, a close-up look at the steed before he was stopped. Gene Stitchka provided the narration for the event at this location. The next stop was the Little Blue Station, where Kathy Moore was the narrator. At this site, 3 wagon trains were attacked by Native Americans. During the reenactment action, an attacker was overpowered by a wagon train member. While the wounded attacker lay on the ground, a young reenactor arrived to ensure he stayed there by repeatedly hitting said victim. The act didn't appear to have been in the script. The tour continued on its way and all over dust-choked roads. Visibility was near zero most of the time. There was a report from an area resident that the Little Blue River was dry for a stretch below Davenport. Drought has been a problem this year in Nuckolls County. The third stop was at the marker near the site where Robert Embry, driving a stagecoach from Big Sandy Station, located east of Nuckolls County, encountered the warring Native Americans. The stage was carrying 7 men and 2 women. Embry turned the stagecoach around and rushed back to warn the members of a wagon train he had earlier encountered, thus saving the lives of numerous people. The stage station at this spot was renamed in the honor of Embry. The stop was an emotional one for John Embry and his son Robert, who was named for his great-great-uncle. John, his wife Sharon, from Omaha, Robert, his wife Kathy, and their daughters Allie and Maddie from Miami, Florida, gathered around the marker to contemplate the heroic feat performed by Robert Embry. The story of Parson Bob Landon was also recounted. He is buried along the trail at a spot called Camp Kane. The final stop was the Oak Grove or Comstock Ranch. The narration was provided by Jane Springer. It was there that Erastus Comstock became the first permanent settler in Nuckolls County. His ranch was a stop for the Pony Express as well as the stagecoach line. 2 men who had stopped at the ranch for supplies were killed by the Cheyenne at that location. Comstock was able to take his family to safety. The Comstocks later returned to the site and continued their residence after the threat of hostility raids had diminished. Descendants of Erastus Comstock were also in attendance. The tour then returned to its starting point in Oak. Though the tour was ended there was plenty to occupy the time and mind of the visitors to Oak. The Oak Museum was open for visitors to experience the evolution of life in the town, from a history of the town baseball teams, including its most famous son, Russ Snyder, a World Series player in the major leagues. To a barbershop, typical of the late 19th and early 20th century, there's much to see and do in the Oak Museum. For the younger set, there was a bounce house and face painting. Several vendors had tables set up. Susie Elting was providing rides in a horse-drawn wagon. Nuckolls County Historical Society was president. Kelly Schroer and Gwen Johnson were dressed in period clothing. and is demonstrating the art of butter making using hand-powered butter churns. A knife maker from Hastings displayed his handcrafted wares. Davenport resident Burdon Peterson demonstrated the craft of broom making, while his wife Deanna provided the quality control. Food concessions were offered with a variety of items. A snow cone vendor was kept busy as the temperature and humidity began to rise. The Oak Community Church hosted a PowerPoint presentation by the great-great-granddaughters of Lucinda Eubanks, one of the women abducted at the Narrows. Gina Rhodes, who resides in Longwood, Colorado, and Cindy Reeves of Blair, Nebraska, are the great-great-granddaughters of Lucinda. They devoted time to researching the life and times of Lucinda, using resources as varied as the Library of Congress to the archives of the Nebraska Historical Society. The two grew up with the stories of her capture, her time with the Native Americans, and her eventual release, along with her 10-month-old son, Willie. Her daughter, Isabel, died soon after her release, thought to be caused by the trauma of her captivity at the age of 3. The three were released from captivity near Denver. Lucinda departed Denver and moved to Quincy, Illinois, then relocated to McCune, Kansas, where she lived the remainder of her life. She died March 4, 1913. Her son Willie grew to manhood, fathered 8 children. Reeves attended her first reenactment in 1963. She returned in 1967 and that year played the part of Lucinda Eubanks. Rhodes and Reeves presented the story of the life and times of Lucinda Eubanks to standing room crowds. More than 500 people were thought to have attended this presentation. John Emery noted that Robert Emery's life after the stagecoach incident was unknown. A ring was commissioned by the passengers of the stagecoach and presented to him in gratitude for his exploits. The whereabouts of the ring is unknown. John noted that it may have been buried with him. The Emery family is proud of the heritage bequeathed to them. Robert and Kathy look to instill that same pride in their daughters. The reenactment is the final result of months of planning and would not have been possible without more than 200 volunteers who work both behind the scenes and out in front of the guests. The volunteers exceed the population of Oak by several times. These pictures were taken during the reenactments of the celebration Oak. We hope you enjoy them.